The blood pooled beneath the stainless steel examination table in thick, crimson rivers that no amount of gauze could contain. Sarah Chen pressed her hands against the German shepherd's chest, feeling his heartbeat growing weaker beneath her gloved fingers. Each pulse a countdown to death that echoed in the sterile chaos of Mercy General Hospital's emergency room. "Ma'am, please, you have to help him." Officer Martinez's voice cracked as he knelt beside the table, his uniform torn and dirty from the shootout that had brought them here. "Rex took a bullet meant for me. He's all I've got." Sarah's 8 years as an ER nurse had prepared her for many things: gunshot wounds, overdoses, heart attacks in the middle of the night, but not this. Not the way Rex's dark eyes looked up at her with an almost human understanding, not the desperate hope in Martinez's voice, and certainly not the cold calculation she could see forming in hospital administrator Dr. Victoria Hartwell's expression as she burst through the trauma bay doors. "Nurse Chen, step away from that animal immediately." Dr. Hartwell's voice cut through the beeping monitors and shouted orders like a blade. At 52, she was all sharp angles and expensive suits, her platinum hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her face into a permanent expression of disapproval. This is a human hospital, not a veterinary clinic. The K-9 unit had crashed through the ER doors 20 minutes earlier in a chaos of sirens and shouting. Officer Martinez, barely out of his 20s with scared eyes and shaking hands, had carried Rex in his arms like a child. The dog had been shot during a drug bust gone wrong. The bullet had pierced his chest, missing his heart by millimeters but nicking a major blood vessel. The veterinary emergency clinic was closed for the night. Their on-call veterinarian was 45 minutes away in downtown Cleveland traffic, and Rex was bleeding out on Sarah's table. "Dr. Hartwell, this animal is dying," Sarah said, not taking her hands off Rex's chest where she was applying pressure to the wound. Her voice was steady, professional, but her heart was racing. She'd made her decision the moment she saw Martinez's tears, the moment she felt Rex's labored breathing against her palm. The bullet fragments need to be removed, and he needs immediate surgical intervention. "Not in my hospital." Each word dropped like a stone. Dr. Hartwell stepped closer, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor with military precision. "We have insurance liability issues, state regulations, protocols. We have a dying creature and the ability to save him," Sarah interrupted, something she'd never done to an administrator in 8 years of nursing. Around them, the Friday night shift continued its usual chaos: drunks and restraints, overdoses being wheeled in, the endless parade of human misery that filled Cleveland's emergency rooms. But for Sarah, the world had narrowed to Rex's shallow breathing and Martinez's desperate eyes. "Doctor," Hartwell's face flushed red above her designer blazer. "Nurse Chen, I am ordering you to step away from that animal and return to your assigned duties. There are actual patients who need your attention." "There are no critical patients right now," Sarah replied, checking the wound again. The bleeding was slowing, a bad sign. It meant Rex was going into shock. "Dr. Patterson is handling the overdose in Bay 3, and the rest are stable. This will take an hour, maybe less." "You are not authorized to practice veterinary medicine," Dr. Hartwell snapped, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling security." Officer Martinez stood up slowly, his hand resting on his service weapon in what Sarah recognized as an unconscious gesture of stress rather than threat. "Ma'am, with all due respect, Rex is a sworn officer of the Cleveland Police Department. He's saved dozens of lives, taken drugs worth millions off the streets. He's got more service commendations than most human cops." 2 more officers had arrived, Sergeant Rodriguez and Officer Johnson from the K-9 unit, still in their tactical gear from the bust. They flanked Martinez, creating a wall of blue between Dr. X, Hartwell, and the examination table. "I don't care if he's the mayor's personal pet, Dr. Every 2 and 8, Hartwell said, her voice rising above the ambient noise of the ER. "This is a hospital, not a zoo. We follow protocols here." Sarah looked down at Rex, whose breathing had become even more labored. His tongue lolled out, pale pink instead of the healthy red it should be. She'd seen enough trauma cases to recognize the signs they had minutes, not hours. "Dr. Hartwell," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I took an oath to preserve life. I didn't take an oath to preserve only human life. Your oath is meaningless if you lose your license practicing veterinary medicine without certification." "Dr. Kame," Hartwell shot back, "which is exactly what will happen if you continue this charade." Sarah met the administrator's cold blue eyes. In that moment, she thought about her daughter Emma, asleep at home with her mother, trusting that mommy would come home from her shift like she always did. She thought about her nursing license, earned through 4 years of school and thousands of dollars in student loans. She thought about the mortgage, the car payment, The medical bills from Emma's asthma treatments. Then she looked at Officer Martinez, who was crying openly now, his hand stroking Rex's head with infinite gentleness. "Get me a surgical kit," she said to the room, not taking her eyes off Dr. Hartwell. "And Prepper 3, it's empty tonight." The administrator's face went white, then red, then white again. "If you take one step toward that operating room with that animal, you will be terminated immediately. Do you understand me, Nurse Chen?" Sarah was already moving, wheeling the examination table toward the hallway. "Then you'd better call my replacement," she said, "because Rex isn't dying on my watch." The next hour passed in a blur of surgical lights and precise movements. Sarah had assisted in hundreds of surgeries, but she'd never been the primary operator. Fortunately, removing bullet fragments wasn't vastly different between species. Stop the bleeding, extract the foreign objects, repair the damage, close the incision. Her hands moved with practiced precision, guided by 8 years of emergency medicine and a determination that surprised even her. Dr. Hartwell stood in the observation gallery above the OR, her arms crossed, occasionally speaking into her phone with sharp, angry gestures. But she didn't stop the surgery. Later, Sarah would realize that the administrator was calculating liability versus PR. Letting a police dog die in their hospital would be bad press, but allowing an unauthorized surgery created other legal risks. Officer Martinez never left the OR. He stood beside the table, still in his torn uniform, whispering to Rex in both English and Spanish. "Stay with me, boy. Stay with me. Sarah's gonna fix you up, and then we're going home." When Sarah finally stepped back from the table, her scrubs soaked in blood and sweat, Rex's chest was rising and falling in steady, strong rhythms. The bullet fragments were in a metal tray, 3 pieces of twisted lead that had nearly ended a life. The surgical site was clean, properly sutured, and showing no signs of continued bleeding. "He's going to be fine," she said, pulling off her gloves. "Full recovery, probably back to active duty in 6 to 8 weeks. Martinez broke down completely, his shoulders shaking as he pressed his face against Rex's neck. The other officers crowded around the table, their faces showing a mixture of relief and gratitude that made Sarah's chest tight with emotion. "Nurse Chen," Sergeant Rodriguez said, his voice gruff with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you, Rex. He's family, you saved our family." Sarah smiled, exhaustion hitting her like a wave now that the adrenaline was fading. "Just doing my job," she said. But even as she said it, she knew that wasn't entirely true. What she'd done went beyond her job description, beyond protocols and procedures. She'd followed something deeper, the same instinct that had made her become a nurse in the first place, the unshakable belief that preserving life was sacred, regardless of the species. Dr. Hartwell was waiting for her in the hallway outside the OR, her expression unreadable. "That was quite a performance, Nurse Chen," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I hope you enjoyed it, because it will be your last in this hospital." Sarah looked back through the observation window at Rex, who was starting to stir as the anesthesia wore off, at Officer Martinez, who was still whispering encouragement, at the 3 officers who were treating her like she'd just performed a miracle. "It was worth it," she said. Dr. Hartwell's smile was sharp as broken glass. "We'll see about that." The weekend passed in a haze of local news coverage and social media attention. Channel 7 ran a feel-good segment about the nurse who saved Cleveland's finest, complete with footage of Rex playing fetch in Officer Martinez's backyard and Sarah blushing as reporters called her a hero. Emma had been so proud, showing the news story to her classmates on her tablet and bragging that her mom was famous. But Monday morning brought a different reality. Sarah's phone buzzed at 7:15 a.m. with a text from HR Director Janet Walsh. "Please report to Conference Room B immediately upon arrival. Do not clock in. Do not report to your station." The words made Sarah's stomach clench with dread. She'd been a nurse long enough to recognize the language of termination, the careful phrasing designed to create a paper trail. She called her mother to pick up Emma from school just in case, and drove to Mercy General with her hands shaking on the steering wheel. Conference Room B was on the administrative floor, a sterile space with beige walls and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sickly. Sarah knocked once and entered to find 3 people seated at the long oak table like a tribunal. Dr. Victoria Hartwell at the center, legal counsel Robert Sterling to her right, and HR Director Janet Walsh to her left. Robert Sterling was everything Sarah expected from a corporate lawyer, mid-40s, expensive suit, dead eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd earned his reputation dismantling wrongful termination lawsuits and finding legal loopholes that let Mercy General avoid accountability for their mistakes. Janet Walsh, on the other hand, looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with her notepad and avoiding eye contact. She'd been HR director for 12 years and had hired Sarah personally, had been present at Emma's third birthday party 2 years ago. "Please sit down, Sarah," Dr. Hartwell said, gesturing to the single chair across from them. The power dynamic was immediately clear, 3 against 1, Sarah isolated and outnumbered. Sarah sat, folding her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. "Good morning," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Let's skip the pleasantries," Dr. Hartwell replied, sliding a thick folder across the table. "This is your personnel file, which I've been reviewing extensively since Friday night's incident." Sterling leaned forward, his voice smooth and practiced. "Ms. Chen, are you familiar with Section 847B of the Mercy General Employee Handbook regarding unauthorized medical procedures?" Sarah blinked. The Employee Handbook was a massive document, literally 847 pages of policies, procedures, and legal disclaimers. She'd signed it when she was hired, like every employee, but no one actually read every page. "I'm familiar with the general medical protocols," she said carefully. Section 847B specifically prohibits any medical intervention on non-human subjects without express written authorization from the hospital administration, the chief of staff, and legal counsel. Sterling continued, reading from a printed page. "Such unauthorized procedures create massive liability exposure for the hospital and constitute grounds for immediate termination." Dr. Hartwell opened Sarah's personnel file, her manicured finger tracing down a page. "You violated this policy willfully and deliberately, despite explicit orders from hospital administration to cease and desist." "I saved a life," Sarah said, her voice rising slightly. "A member of the Cleveland Police Department was bleeding out on my table, and I had the skills to help him. You performed veterinary surgery without a veterinary license." Dr. Hartwell snapped. "You used hospital equipment, supplies, and facilities for unauthorized procedures. You endangered our accreditation status, our insurance coverage, and our legal standing." Janet Walsh finally spoke, her voice quiet and apologetic. "Sarah, we understand your motivations were good, but there are procedures that would have let Rex die," Sarah interrupted. "Procedures that value paperwork more than lives." Sterling's smile was sharp and predatory. "And that brings us to the more serious issue, Miss Chen. By performing surgery on an animal, you were practicing veterinary medicine without a license. This is a violation of Ohio state law, punishable by fines and criminal charges." Sarah felt the room spinning around her. Criminal charges? For saving a dog's life? For practicing medicine without proper certification? Dr. W.W. Hartwell corrected. "The State Veterinary Board takes these violations very seriously, as does the State Nursing Board, which oversees your license to practice." The threat was clear and devastating. Sarah's nursing license was everything without it. She couldn't work in any medical facility in Ohio. It represented 8 years of education, thousands of hours of training, her entire career and identity. "However," Sterling continued, sliding a document across the table, "the hospital is prepared to be reasonable. This is a voluntary resignation letter, along with a non-disclosure agreement. If you sign both documents, agree to leave quietly without speaking to the media or creating further publicity, we'll handle this as a resignation rather than a termination. Your nursing license won't be affected." Sarah stared at the papers, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. The resignation letter was brief and professional. "I, Sarah Chen, hereby voluntarily resign my position as staff nurse at Mercy General Hospital, effective immediately. I acknowledge that this resignation is due to my violation of hospital policies and procedures." The non-disclosure agreement was longer and more ominous, filled with legal language about confidentiality obligations and protection of proprietary information. What it boiled down to was simple. Sign this, and she could never speak publicly about what had happened, never explain her side of the story. "And if I don't sign?" she asked. Dr. Hartwell's smile was cruel. "Then you'll be terminated for cause, which goes on your permanent employment record. We'll file complaints with both the State Nursing Board and the State Veterinary Board. You'll face professional discipline hearings, possible criminal charges, and civil liability for the unauthorized use of hospital resources. The legal fees alone will bankrupt you," Sterling added helpfully. "And that's assuming you win, which you won't." Sarah looked at Janet Walsh, hoping for some support from the woman who had hired her, who had seen her dedication and skill over 8 years of exemplary service. But Janet was staring at her notepad, her face flushed with embarrassment and fear. "Janet," Sarah said softly, "you know me. You know I'm a good nurse. You know I care about doing the right thing." Janet glanced up briefly, her eyes wet with unshed tears. Sarah, the hospital has to protect itself. We have policies for a reason. To protect the hospital, Sarah said bitterly. Not to protect lives. To protect human lives, Dr. Hartwell corrected. Which is our mission and our legal obligation, not to play veterinarian with police dogs. Sarah stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I won't sign these papers. I saved a life, and I won't apologize for that or pretend it was wrong. Dr. Hartwell's expression didn't change, but Sterling looked almost pleased. That's your choice, Ms. Chen. But you should know that we have security footage of your entire unauthorized procedure, witness statements from multiple staff members, and documentation of your direct refusal to follow administrative orders. You also should know, Dr. Hartwell added, standing as well, that I've already contacted the State Nursing Board. Your hearing is scheduled for next month. I'll be providing testimony about your violation of professional boundaries and your willingness to endanger patients by ignoring hospital protocols. Sarah felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. The nursing board hearing would be public record, potentially career-ending even if she won. And Dr. Hartwell's influence in the medical community was considerable. Her testimony would carry significant weight. One more thing, Dr. Hartwell said, as Sarah turned toward the door. Security will escort you from the building. Your personal belongings from your locker will be mailed to you. You are not to return to Mercy General property or contact any current employees regarding this matter. Janet, please, Sarah began, but Walsh shook her head, still not meeting her eyes. I'm sorry, Sarah, I really am. The security escort was the final humiliation. 2 guards flanked Sarah as she walked through the hospital corridors where she'd worked for 8 years, past colleagues who stared in shock and confusion. She heard whispered conversations. That's the nurse who operated on the police dog. I heard she got fired. Wonder what really happened. At the main entrance, Officer Martinez was waiting with Rex, who was wearing a protective cone but otherwise looked healthy and alert. When he saw Sarah, Martinez's face broke into a huge smile. Sarah! There she is, Rex. There's the lady who saved your life. Rex's tail wagged enthusiastically, and he strained against his leash to reach her. Officer Martinez, Sarah said, kneeling to pet Rex, who immediately began licking her face through the cone. The simple affection of the dog she'd saved brought tears to her eyes. I can't thank you enough, Martinez continued. The vet says Rex is healing perfectly. Full recovery, just like you said. You're a miracle worker. One of the security guards cleared his throat. Ma'am, you need to leave the property immediately. Martinez looked confused. Is everything okay? I thought you were working today. Sarah stood, wiping her eyes. There were some policy issues about treating Rex. It's complicated. Policy issues? Martinez's voice hardened. What kind of policy issues? Ma'am, the security guard said more firmly. Now. Sarah kissed the top of Rex's head. Take care of yourself, boy. You're a good dog. As she walked to her car, she heard Martinez arguing with the security guards, demanding to know what was happening. But she couldn't turn around, couldn't explain. The non-disclosure papers she'd refused to sign didn't prevent Dr. Hartwell from firing her, but speaking publicly about her termination would still give them grounds to sue her for defamation or breach of confidentiality. Sitting in her car in the hospital parking lot, Sarah called her mother. Mom, she said when the familiar voice answered, can you keep Emma for a few extra hours today? I need to figure some things out. Of course, honey. Is everything all right? Sarah looked back at Mercy General Hospital, the place where she'd spent 8 years of her life, where she'd saved countless patients and earned the respect of doctors and colleagues, where she'd just saved another life and been fired for it. No, Mom, she said, starting the engine. Everything is not all right. The phone call started Tuesday morning. Sarah woke to her cell phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand, a number she didn't recognize with a Cleveland area code. Miss Chen, this is Patricia Vance from the Cleveland Plain Dealer. I'm calling about your termination from Mercy General Hospital. Would you care to comment? Sarah sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. How did you? Who told you I was terminated? The hospital issued a press release yesterday evening, citing policy violations and patient safety concerns. They're saying you performed unauthorized medical procedures that put patients at risk. Is that accurate? That's not... Sarah started, then stopped herself. She hadn't signed the non-disclosure agreement, but anything she said could be used against her in the nursing board hearing. I can't comment right now. Miss Chen, there are some serious allegations being made about your professional conduct. Don't you want to tell your side of the story? Sarah hung up, her hands shaking. A press release? They'd issued a press release about her firing? She grabbed her laptop and searched for Sarah Chen Mercy General. The results made her stomach drop. The hospital's official statement was cold and clinical. Mercy General Hospital has terminated staff nurse Sarah Chen following serious violations of hospital policy and patient safety protocols. Ms. Bitely, Chen performed unauthorized medical procedures in direct contradiction of administrative orders, potentially exposing patients and the hospital to significant liability. The safety of our patients is our highest priority, and we cannot tolerate actions that compromise that safety. But worse than the hospital's statement were the follow-up articles and social media posts. The narrative was already forming. Sarah wasn't a hero who saved a police dog, she was a rogue nurse who endangered patients by ignoring safety protocols. A medical blogger with 50,000 followers had already posted an analysis. The dangerous precedent of the hero nurse. Why following protocol matters more than good intentions. The post dissected her actions with surgical precision, arguing that nurses who ignored medical protocols, regardless of their motivations, created dangerous precedents that could lead to patient deaths. The comment section was brutal. Typical nurse ego thinks she knows better than the doctors and administrators. What if a human patient had needed that oar while she was playing veterinarian? She should lose her license. We can't have nurses making their own rules. Sarah's phone rang again, another reporter, then another. By noon, she'd received 17 calls from media outlets, 3 from lawyers offering to represent her, for substantial fees she couldn't afford, and one that made her blood run cold. Miss Chen, this is Detective Ray Morrison with Cleveland PD. I need to speak with you about your actions at Mercy General Hospital on Friday night. Detective Morrison was waiting in the lobby of Sarah's apartment building when she came down to meet him. He was exactly what she'd expected from his voice. Mid-50s, thick around the middle, with the tired eyes of a cop who'd seen too much. But there was something else in his expression, something calculating that made Sarah immediately wary. Detective Morrison, she said, extending her hand. He shook it briefly, his grip unnecessarily firm. Appreciate you meeting with me, Miss Chen. This is about the unauthorized medical procedure you performed Friday night. They sat in the lobby's small seating area, Morrison pulling out a notebook with practiced efficiency. Now, I understand you operated on a police dog without proper authorization. That correct? I provided emergency medical care to a wounded animal, Sarah replied carefully. Officer Martinez's K-9 was bleeding out, and I had the skills to help. Right, Morrison nodded, scribbling notes. And you did this despite direct orders from hospital administration to stop? Sarah hesitated. The question felt like a trap. Dr. Hartwell objected to the procedure, yes. So you willfully disobeyed a direct order from your supervisor? I saved a life. That's not what I asked. Morrison's voice hardened. Did you, or did you not, willfully disobey a direct order from hospital administration? Yes, but, and in doing so, did you use hospital equipment and supplies without authorization? Detective, what exactly are you investigating here? I thought you'd be supportive of someone who saved a police dog's life. Morrison's smile was cold. Ma'am, I investigate violations of the law, and practicing medicine without proper licensure is a violation of Ohio state law. The hospital has filed a complaint alleging theft of medical supplies and equipment. Theft? Sarah's voice rose. I used supplies to save Rex's life. Supplies that didn't belong to you, for a purpose not authorized by the hospital. Morrison closed his notebook. Now I understand you're facing professional discipline hearings as well. That's a separate matter. But if the prosecutor decides to file criminal charges, and that's looking likely, you'll be hearing from us again. After Morrison left, Sarah sat in her apartment staring at her phone as it continued to ring with calls from reporters. The hospital's PR machine was working overtime, she realized. They weren't just firing her, they were destroying her reputation to protect themselves from any potential liability. Her laptop chimed with a new email notification. Margaret Stone, hearing officer for the State Nursing Board. Miss S. Chen, you are hereby notified of formal disciplinary proceedings regarding allegations of professional misconduct. A hearing has been scheduled for March 15th at 10:00 a.m. at the State Board offices in Columbus. You have the right to legal representation at this hearing. Attached was a formal complaint that made Sarah's heart sink. Dr. Hartwell hadn't just reported the incident, she'd painted Sarah as a dangerous rogue who regularly ignored protocols and put patients at risk. The complaint cited numerous instances of insubordination, willful disregard for patient safety, and practicing outside scope of professional license. It was all lies, or at best, gross distortions of the truth. The numerous instances of insubordination referred to times Sarah had questioned treatment decisions, standard practice for experienced nurses, and encouraged as patient advocacy. The willful disregard for patient safety was her decision to save Rex when no human patients needed immediate attention. But the nursing board wouldn't know that. They would see Dr. Hartwell's credentials, her position as hospital administrator, and her carefully crafted narrative of a nurse who couldn't be trusted to follow rules. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her ex-husband David. Saw the news. This is exactly the kind of instability I was worried about. We need to talk about Emma's living situation. The custody threat was clear. David had been looking for an excuse to get full custody since their divorce, claiming that Sarah's work schedule made her an unfit mother. Now he had ammunition professional misconduct allegations, potential criminal charges, unemployment. Another text came in from her friend Lisa, who worked in the pediatric ward at Mercy General. Sarah, I'm so sorry about what happened. I want to help, but they've told us we're not allowed to contact you or we'll face disciplinary action too. I'm risking my job even sending this text. Please be careful. The isolation was beginning. The hospital was systematically cutting Sarah off from her support network, intimidating her former colleagues into silence. Anyone who publicly supported her would face the same treatment harassment, investigation, potential termination. Sarah opened her laptop and started typing a response to the nursing board complaint, but stopped after a few paragraphs. Every word she wrote could be used against her. Every defense could be twisted into an admission of guilt. She needed a lawyer, but the few who'd contacted her wanted retainer fees she couldn't afford. Her phone rang again, another reporter. This time she answered. Miss Chen, this is Janet Kim from Channel 7 Investigative Unit. I'm the reporter who covered your story over the weekend. Oh, Sarah said, surprised. Janet Kim had been the one positive voice, the reporter who'd called her a hero for saving Rex. I've been following up on the hospital's press release, and I have some questions about their version of events. Would you be willing to meet and discuss what really happened Friday night? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Speaking to a reporter was risky. Anything she said could be taken out of context, could make the situation worse. But Janet Kim had seemed fair in her initial coverage. I need to think about it, Sarah said finally. Miss Chen, I've been investigating Mercy General for several months now. There are some things about Dr. Hartwell and the hospital's practices that you should know about. Things that put your situation in a very different context. What kind of things? Not over the phone, but if you're willing to meet, I think you'll find it very interesting. After Kim hung up, Sarah sat in her quiet apartment, feeling the walls closing in around her. Emma was at school, unaware that her mother's world was collapsing. The phone continued to ring reporters, lawyers, creditors who'd seen the news and were worried about her ability to pay her bills. She looked at the framed photo on her end table herself and Emma at last year's hospital Christmas party, both of them smiling and happy. Emma wearing a tiny stethoscope that Dr. Plate Patterson had given her, pretending to examine her stuffed animals. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now. Sarah Chen, respected ER nurse and single mother, was gone. In her place was Sarah Chen, disgraced healthcare worker and potential criminal defendant. Her laptop chimed again, another email. This one from the apartment management company. Miss Chen, we've received some concerning reports about recent events involving your employment. Per the terms of your lease agreement, we need to discuss your continued residency. Please contact our office to schedule a meeting. Even her housing was now at risk. The hospital's campaign to destroy her reputation was working perfectly, turning her into a pariah who couldn't work, couldn't speak publicly in her own defense, and was losing everything she'd worked for. But as Sarah looked at that photo of Emma, she felt something besides fear and despair. Anger. Pure, clean anger at the injustice of it all. She'd saved a life, a member of the police force, no less, and was being punished as if she'd committed a crime. Maybe it was time to call Janet Kim back. The coffee shop was nearly empty at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, which was exactly why Janet Kim had chosen it for their meeting. Sarah arrived first, choosing a corner table where she could see both entrances, a habit she'd developed since her phone number had somehow leaked and reporters had started showing up at random places. Janet Kim was younger than Sarah had expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes behind stylish glasses and the kind of focused intensity that marked good investigative reporters. She slid into the seat across from Sarah with a manila folder thick with documents. Miss Chen, thank you for meeting with me. I know this is a difficult time. Please, just call me Sarah. And thank you for being fair in your original coverage. It seems like you're the only reporter who actually talked about what I did instead of what the hospital says I did. Kim opened her folder, revealing what looked like financial documents, emails, and medical records with names blacked out. Sarah, what I'm about to share with you is going to change how you see your situation. But first, I need you to understand I've been investigating Mercy General for 8 months. Your case isn't isolated. Over the next hour, Kim laid out a pattern of corruption and corporate malfeasance that made Sarah's head spin. Dr. Hartwell had been systematically steering lucrative medical contracts away from Mercy General to competing hospitals where she had financial interests. The police medical services contract worth nearly $2 million annually was up for renewal, and Hartwell had been looking for a reason to terminate it. 3 months ago, a K-9 unit brought in an injured dog after a training accident, Kim explained, sliding a police report across the table. The dog had internal bleeding completely treatable. Dr. Hartwell refused treatment, citing the same policy she used against you. The dog died in the parking lot while they waited for the veterinary transport. Sarah's hands tightened around her coffee cup. Rex wasn't the first? Not even close. I have records of 4 incidents in the past year where Mercy General refused emergency care to service animals. 2 dogs died, 1 horse was put down due to complications from delayed treatment. Why didn't this come out before? Kim's expression darkened. Because Dr. Hartwell is very good at controlling the narrative. Officers who complained were told their concerns would affect the police medical contract for human officers. The hospital has leverage. They provide medical care for on-duty injuries, workers' compensation cases, all the routine medical needs for the entire police department. Sarah felt sick. So they used officers' health coverage as a threat to keep them quiet about their dogs? Exactly. And it worked, until you saved Rex in front of half the K-9 unit. Now they can't cover it up anymore. Kim pulled out another document, an email chain with Dr. Hartwell's name on it. This is where it gets really interesting. These are internal emails I obtained from a source at the hospital. Dr. Hartwell's name on it. Hartwell specifically ordered staff to discourage police from bringing service animals to Mercy General, directing them instead to Cleveland Metropolitan Hospital. Where she has financial interests? Where she owns stock and sits on the board of directors, Kim confirmed. The police contract there is worth significantly more than the one at Mercy General. By killing the contract at her own hospital, she stands to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in increased dividends and board fees. Sarah stared at the emails, the words blurring as she tried to process the magnitude of what Kim was showing her. She destroyed my career to make money? She destroyed your career because you exposed her scheme. Your heroic action made it impossible for her to claim that refusing service animal treatment was standard medical practice. You proved that the dogs could be saved, that the hospital had the capability and resources. Kim's phone buzzed with notifications, and she glanced at it with a frown. Speaking of exposure, your story has gone national. Save Sarah Chen is trending on Twitter, and the police union issued a statement this morning supporting you. Sarah pulled out her own phone, which she'd been keeping on silent mode to avoid the constant calls from reporters. Her social media notifications were overwhelming thousands of messages of support, but also a significant amount of hostility. The police union statement was strong and unequivocal. Nurse Sarah Chen demonstrated the highest level of compassion and professional skill in saving the life of Officer Rex, a decorated member of our K-9 unit. Her termination is a disgrace and an insult to every officer who puts their life on the line with their 4-legged partners. We call on Mercy General Hospital to immediately reinstate Ms. Chen and issue a public apology. But the hospital had responded with their own statement, doubling down on their position. While we respect the police union's loyalty to their K-9 officers, patient safety must remain our highest priority. Ms. Chen's unauthorized actions violated fundamental medical protocols and created serious liability concerns. We stand by our decision to terminate her employment. The social media response was deeply divided. Save Sarah Chen was trending, but so was protocols exist for a reason. Animal lovers and police supporters rallied to her defense, but medical professionals and hospital administrators raised concerns about dangerous precedents and scope of practice violations. Dr. Patricia Wells, a prominent emergency medicine physician at Cleveland Clinic, had posted a lengthy analysis on her medical blog. While Ms. Chen's motivations were admirable, her actions represent a serious breach of professional boundaries. Nurses who ignore administrative directives and practice outside their scope of licensure create dangerous precedents that could ultimately harm patients. The comments on that post were brutal. Finally, someone with medical credentials speaking truth. This nurse could have killed that dog with her unauthorized surgery. What happens when she decides to ignore protocols with human patients next time? The hero worship is out of control. She broke the rules, period. Sarah looked up at Kim, who was watching her with sympathetic eyes. It's overwhelming, Sarah admitted. It's war, Kim replied bluntly. Dr. Hartwell has serious connections in the medical community, and she's using all of them to destroy your reputation. But she made one crucial mistake. What's that? Kim smiled for the first time since they'd started talking. She went after a police dog, and police officers don't forget when someone hurts their own. As if summoned by her words, Sarah's phone rang. The caller ID showed Officer Martinez. Sarah, thank God I reached you. Listen, the entire K-9 unit is furious about what's happening to you. We've been doing our own investigation into the hospital's treatment of service animals, and what we've found is, well, let's just say Dr. Hartwell has some serious explaining to do. What do you mean? Sarah asked, putting the phone on speaker so Kim could hear. I mean, we have recordings, documentation, evidence that this isn't about policy violations, it's about money. She's been deliberately sabotaging the police medical contract for months. Your situation just gave her the excuse she needed to terminate it entirely. Kim leaned forward, her reporter instincts sharp. Officer Martinez, this is Janet Kim from Channel 7. Would you be willing to go on record with what you found? Ma'am, I'll go on every news channel in the state if it means getting justice for Sarah. She saved Rex's life, and they're destroying her for it. That's not right, and every cop in Cleveland knows it. After Martinez hung up, Kim gathered her documents with renewed energy. Sarah, I need to ask you something important. Are you willing to fight this? Really fight it, not just defend yourself but go on the offensive? Sarah thought about Emma, who'd been asking why Mommy seemed so sad lately, about her nursing license hearing next month, about the mounting bills and the threatening letters from the hospital's lawyers. What would that look like? It means we expose everything. Dr. Hartwell's financial conflicts, the pattern of service animal deaths, the corruption in the contract system. It means going public with all of it, accepting the risks that come with challenging a powerful institution. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Stop talking to reporters or things will get worse for you and your daughter. She showed the message to Kim, whose expression hardened. Anonymous threats. That's a new low, even for Dr. Hartwell's people. Another text came in, this one from David, her ex-husband. My lawyer filed the custody motion this morning. Emma deserves stability, and you clearly can't provide it anymore. The custody motion. Sarah's worst fear, the one thing that could destroy her more completely than losing her nursing license or facing criminal charges. If David got full custody of Emma, Sarah would have lost everything that truly mattered. Kim, she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. Tell me exactly what kind of fight you're talking about. Kim pulled out a digital recorder and placed it on the table between them. The kind where we win, but I need you to tell me everything, the whole story, from the beginning, on the record. No holding back, no protecting the hospital's reputation, just the truth. Sarah looked around the coffee shop, at the normal people living their normal lives, unaware that her world was collapsing in real time. Then she looked at Kim, at the reporter's determined expression and the folder full of evidence that might be her salvation. Okay, she said, leaning toward the recorder. Let's tell the truth. The law offices of Morrison, Party 8, associates occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown Cleveland skyscraper, all glass and marble and intimidation. Sarah had never been in a building so expensive, where even the elevator buttons felt like they cost more than her monthly rent. She was there because she'd been summoned, not requested, not invited, but summoned by formal legal notice to give a deposition regarding her, quote, criminal misuse of medical facilities. Amanda Cross was waiting in conference room A, surrounded by law books and legal documents like a general commanding an army of paperwork. At 45, she was everything Sarah expected from a high-powered corporate attorney, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, a suit that probably cost more than Sarah made in a month, and cold blue eyes that seemed to see straight through to every weakness and vulnerability. Miss Chen, Cross said, not bothering to stand or offer her hand. Please sit, we have quite a bit to discuss. Sarah's court-appointed attorney, Mike Torres, was already seated at the far end of the conference table, looking overwhelmed and underprepared. Fresh out of law school with a caseload of 47 clients, he'd spent exactly 30 minutes reviewing Sarah's case before this meeting. His strategy, as he'd explained in their brief phone conversation, was simple. Just answer their questions honestly and hope for the best. Cross activated a digital recorder, and began the formal process. This is a deposition in the matter of Mercy General Hospital versus Sarah Chen regarding allegations of theft, unauthorized practice of medicine, and willful violation of employment contracts. Ms. Sesabrave, Chen, you are under oath. For the next 3 hours, Cross systematically dismantled Sarah's life. She started with the incident itself, forcing Sarah to recount every detail of treating Rex, every moment of her defiance of Dr. Hartwell's orders. But that was just the warm-up. Miss Chen, let's discuss your financial situation. You're currently unemployed, correct? Yes, since I was fired from Mercy General. Terminated for cause, Cross corrected. And you're behind on your rent, your car payment, and your daughter's medical expenses? Torres finally spoke up. Objection? Relevance? Cross smiled coldly. Miss Chen's desperate financial situation goes to motive, Your Honor. She was willing to violate hospital policy and state law because she needed positive media attention to help with her custody battle. Sarah felt like she'd been punched. That's not true. I saved Rex because he was dying, not for publicity. Really? Then why did you speak to Channel 7 reporter Janet Kim immediately after the incident? Why did you cooperate with multiple media outlets to promote the hero-nurse narrative? I spoke to one reporter, days after I was fired, to defend myself against the hospital's lies. Cross pulled out a thick folder. Let's talk about those lies, shall we? This is your employment record at Mercy General. 17 documented instances of insubordination, failure to follow protocols, and questioning of medical authority. Hardly the record of a model employee. Sarah stared at the documents, recognizing incident reports she'd never seen before. Times when she'd advocated for patients, questioned medication orders that seemed wrong, or suggested alternative treatments. All of it reframed as insubordination and repackaged as evidence of her dangerous disregard for authority. Ms. Chen, on March 15th of last year, you directly contradicted Dr. Patterson's treatment plan for a cardiac patient, insisting on additional tests that he deemed unnecessary. This caused a 3-hour delay in treatment. The patient was showing signs of secondary infection. I was right, the tests showed severe sepsis that would have killed him if we'd followed the original treatment plan. That's not the point. The point is that you routinely second-guess medical decisions made by physicians with far more training and experience than you have. Cross continued through the file, each incident presented in the worst possible light. Sarah's patient advocacy became chronic insubordination. Her clinical expertise became overstepping professional boundaries. Her 8 years of exemplary service disappeared beneath a mountain of carefully crafted documentation. Now let's discuss the night in question. You were specifically ordered by hospital administration to cease treating the animal. You refused. Is that correct? Dr. Hartwell wanted to let Rex die. I couldn't do that. You couldn't follow a direct order from your supervisor? Not when it meant letting a living being die unnecessarily. Cross leaned forward, her voice sharp. Miss Chen, are you a veterinarian? No. Are you licensed to practice veterinary medicine in the state of Ohio? No, but have you ever received formal training in veterinary surgery? No, but the principles of emergency medicine? Yes or no, Miss Chen? Have you ever received formal training in veterinary surgery? Sarah felt the trap closing around her. No. So when you performed surgery on that animal, you were practicing medicine outside your area of licensure, training, and legal authority, correct? Torres tried to object, but Cross cut him off. The witness can answer the question. I used my medical training to save a life, Sarah said, her voice rising. The same training that saved dozens of human patients. Training that doesn't extend to veterinary medicine, Cross replied smoothly. Training that didn't give you the authority to ignore hospital policies, use equipment without authorization, or practice outside your scope of license. The deposition continued for 2 more hours, each question designed to paint Sarah as an unstable, insubordinate employee who had finally gone too far. By the time it ended, Sarah felt hollowed out. Every defense turned against her, every good intention twisted into evidence of wrongdoing. Outside the law offices, Torres tried to be encouraging. Depositions are always rough. They're fishing for information, trying to intimidate you. Did it work? Sarah asked bitterly. Torres didn't answer directly. Sarah, I need to be honest with you. They have a strong case for the employment violations. Dr. Hartwell's testimony is going to be very compelling, and they have documentation going back years. Documentation they created after the fact to justify firing me. Maybe, but proving that would require resources we don't have. Discovery, expert witnesses, document analysis, it all costs money. Money Sarah didn't have. Her unemployment benefits had been denied because she'd been terminated for cause. Her credit cards were maxed out, and the bills kept coming. Emma's inhaler prescription alone cost $300 per month without insurance. "What are you recommending?" Sarah asked. Torres looked uncomfortable. "The prosecutor's office called this morning. They're considering criminal charges, practicing medicine without a license, theft of hospital property, reckless endangerment." "Reckless endangerment? I saved Rex's life." "They're arguing that you endangered human patients by using resources and/or time that might have been needed for emergencies." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "There were no emergencies that night. No human patients needed that operating room." "That's not how they're framing it. They're saying your unauthorized surgery created a situation where, if an emergency had occurred, resources wouldn't have been available." It was Kafkaesque logic. She was being charged with crimes based on hypothetical situations that never occurred. But she was learning that the legal system wasn't about truth or justice. It was about power and resources and the ability to craft compelling narratives. "The prosecutor is willing to offer a plea deal," Torres continued. "Misdemeanor charges, probation, community service, no jail time, but you'd have to accept responsibility and agree to surrender your nursing license." "Surrender my license?" Sarah's voice cracked. "That's my career. That's everything I've worked for." "It's better than a felony conviction. With criminal charges on your record, you'd never work in healthcare again anyway." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from David's lawyer. "Custody hearing moved up to next week. Recent criminal investigation demonstrates continued instability and poor decision-making by Ms. Chen." The legal noose was tightening from every direction. Criminal charges, civil lawsuits, professional discipline hearings, custody battles, each one designed to force her into submission, to make her accept that speaking truth to power had consequences. But as Sarah walked to her car, she thought about Rex, about the feel of his heartbeat growing stronger under her hands, about Officer Martinez's tears of gratitude. She thought about all the service animals who had died because of Dr. Hartwell's policies, and all the ones who might die in the future if nothing changed. Her phone rang. Janet Kim. "Sarah, I need to see you immediately. We just got a break in the case that changes everything." "What kind of break?" "The kind that's going to destroy Dr. Hartwell's credibility and probably send her to prison. How quickly can you get to the Channel 7 studios?" For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt something other than despair. "I'm on my way." The unemployment office smelled like desperation and industrial disinfectant, a combination that seemed to seep into Sarah's clothes and follow her home. She sat in the plastic chair across from benefits counselor Maria Santos, a tired woman in her 50s who had clearly heard every sob story and excuse in the book. "Ms. Chen, your application for unemployment benefits has been denied," Santos said, sliding a form across the scratched metal desk. "You were terminated for cause specifically, willful violation of workplace policies and insubordination." Sarah stared at the denial form, the official state seal making it feel like a death sentence. "I saved a life. How is that grounds for denial of benefits? According to your former employer's report, you deliberately disobeyed direct orders and used company resources for unauthorized purposes." Santos's voice was matter-of-fact, neither sympathetic nor hostile, just tired. "That constitutes misconduct under Ohio unemployment law. Can I appeal this decision?" "You can, but it's unlikely to be overturned." Mercy General provided extensive documentation of policy violations going back several years. Dr. Hartwell's character assassination campaign was thorough and retroactive, rewriting Sarah's entire employment history to support the narrative of a problem employee who finally went too far. Walking out of the unemployment office into the gray March afternoon, Sarah felt the weight of her situation settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. No job, no unemployment benefits, no prospects in the medical field while the nursing board investigation was pending. Her savings account had exactly $247 left, and the rent was due in 5 days. Her phone buzzed. "Mom, can you pick me up from school? Mrs. Peterson wants to talk to you about something." Emma. Sarah's chest tightened with fresh anxiety as she drove to Lincoln Elementary, wondering what new crisis awaited her. Mrs. Wanzergerslasten, Peterson, Emma's third-grade teacher, was waiting in the principal's office with a concerned expression. "Miss Chen, thank you for coming. We need to discuss some behavioral issues Emma has been having." "What kind of behavioral issues?" Mrs. Peterson pulled out a folder of incident reports. "She's been getting into fights during recess, talking back to teachers, refusing to participate in class activities. This morning she threw her math book across the room and told me that grown-ups are all liars anyway." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the guilt wash over her. She'd been so consumed with her own crisis that she hadn't noticed how much it was affecting Emma. Her 8-year-old daughter was acting out because her world was falling apart, and Sarah had been too wrapped up in legal battles and financial stress to see it. She's been asking a lot of questions about why people are saying bad things about her mommy on TV. Mrs. Peterson continued gently. Some of the other children have been less than kind. What do you mean? Their parents have been talking about the news coverage. Children repeat what they hear at home. Emma's been called names, excluded from playground games. She's feeling isolated and defensive. Sarah thought about the anonymous text threats, the social media attacks, the way former colleagues avoided eye contact when they saw her at the grocery store. She'd hoped to shield Emma from the worst of it, but 8-year-olds weren't stupid. They absorbed everything, processed it through their limited understanding of adult complexities, and came up with their own painful conclusions. Is there anything we can do to help her through this? Sarah asked. The school counselor has been working with her, but honestly, children are resilient when they feel secure at home. The question is whether Emma feels secure right now. The question hit like a punch to the stomach because Sarah knew the answer. Emma didn't feel secure because Sarah didn't feel secure. How could an 8-year-old feel safe when her mother was falling apart, when their apartment might be lost, when the whole foundation of their life was crumbling? That evening, Sarah sat on Emma's bed for their nightly routine. But instead of reading a story, Emma had questions. Mommy, are you going to jail? Sarah's heart broke. No, sweetheart. Why would you ask that? Taylor's mom said you broke the law, and that's why Daddy wants me to live with him. Emma's voice was small and scared. Did you really do something bad? Sarah struggled to find words that would comfort an 8-year-old without lying to her. I helped a hurt animal when the hospital didn't want me to. Some people think that was wrong, but I think it was right. Like when I helped the baby bird with the broken wing? Exactly like that. But you got in trouble and I didn't. Sometimes grown-ups have different rules than kids do. Sometimes those rules don't make sense. Emma was quiet for a moment then. Mommy, are we going to be okay? It was the question Sarah had been dreading, the one she couldn't answer honestly without terrifying her daughter. Because the truth was that Sarah didn't know if they were going to be okay. The custody hearing was in 3 days, the nursing board hearing the week after that. Criminal charges were still pending. Their apartment lease wouldn't be renewed. Her mother's health was declining, and the stress of supporting Sarah and Emma was taking its toll. We're gonna figure it out, baby. Mommy's gonna fight for us. But even as she said it, Sarah wondered if she had any fight left. The panic attacks had started 2 weeks ago, sudden, overwhelming waves of terror that left her gasping and shaking. She'd lost 15 pounds from stress and lack of appetite. Sleep was elusive, interrupted by nightmares about losing Emma and waking anxiety about the approaching legal battles. After Emma fell asleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a stack of bills and a calculator, trying to perform miracles with mathematics. Rent. 200. Car payment. 315. Utilities. 180. Emma's asthma medications. 300. Groceries. 400. Legal fees. 500 retainer that she couldn't afford. Total monthly expenses. 895. Current income. 0. The gas station manager had called that afternoon. Night shift clerk position, 12 an hour, 40 hours a week if she was lucky. It would barely cover their basic expenses, and it would mean leaving Emma with her mother every night, coming home exhausted and stressed every morning. But it was the only job offer she'd received in 6 weeks of searching. The nursing positions all required background checks, and the pending criminal investigation made her radioactive to potential employers. Even non-medical jobs were scarce. Her story had gotten enough local media attention that many employers recognized her name and didn't want the controversy. Sarah's laptop chimed with an email from David's attorney. Ms. Chen, please find attached the custody modification petition filed today in family court. As you will see, we are seeking immediate emergency custody transfer based on your recent criminal investigation, employment termination, and demonstrated inability to provide stable housing for the minor child. The hearing is scheduled for Friday at 2:00 p.m. The petition was brutal and comprehensive, painting Sarah as an unfit mother whose criminal behavior and poor judgment endangered Emma's well-being. It cited the hospital investigation, the potential criminal charges, the media attention, and the unstable living situation created by her inability to maintain employment. Most devastating was a psychological evaluation requested by David's attorney, suggesting that Sarah's pattern of defiance toward authority figures and willingness to ignore rules and regulations indicated deeper psychological issues that made her unsuitable for primary custody. Sarah read through the legal document, each paragraph another nail in the coffin of her relationship with her daughter. David's lawyers had done their homework, crafting a narrative that turned her act of compassion into evidence of mental instability, her fight for justice into proof of poor judgment. Her phone rang. Janet Kim. Sarah, I have good news and bad news. Which do you want first? I don't think I can handle any more bad news today. Then let's start with the good. The K-9 unit investigation found something big, really big, Doctor. Hartwell has been taking kickbacks from Cleveland Metropolitan Hospital for steering business their way. We're talking about felony corruption charges. Probably federal wire fraud, too. For a moment, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. That's huge. That proves everything you've been saying about her motives. It gets better. Officer Martinez found recordings of phone calls between Dr. Hartwell and Metropolitan's board of directors. She was specifically paid to sabotage the police medical contract at Mercy General. Recordings? How? Turns out Martinez is more tech-savvy than he looks. He suspected something was wrong months ago and started recording his interactions with hospital administrators. Ohio is a one-party consent state, so the recordings are admissible. Sarah felt tears of relief running down her face. This changes everything, right? This proves I was right about her. Kim was quiet for a moment. That's the bad news, Sarah. It changes everything for Dr. Hartwell. She's going to prison. But it doesn't change anything for you legally. You still violated hospital policy, you still performed unauthorized surgery, you still face the same criminal charges, but now everyone will know why she fired me. Yes, and public opinion will probably shift in your favor. But the legal system doesn't work on public opinion. You still broke the law, even if your motives were good and hers were corrupt. Sarah sank into her kitchen chair, the brief moment of hope extinguished. So this doesn't help me at all? It helps with the custody case. David's argument that you're unstable loses credibility when you're vindicated as a whistleblower who exposed corruption. And it definitely helps with public perception. But the criminal charges, the nursing board hearing, the civil lawsuit, those all proceed as planned. After Kim hung up, Sarah sat in her dark apartment, listening to Emma's peaceful breathing from the next room. Her daughter was dreaming, safe in the only childhood she'd ever known, unaware that Friday's custody hearing might be the last night she spent in this apartment, in this life. Sarah pulled out a piece of paper and began writing a letter she hoped she'd never have to give Emma, but knew she should prepare just in case. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means Mommy had to go away for a while, and you're living with Daddy now. I want you to know that everything Mommy did was because I love you, and because I believe in doing what's right, even when it's hard. Sometimes grown-ups have to make choices that seem impossible. I chose to save Rex's life because that's what my heart told me was right. I chose to fight the people who wanted to punish me for saving him because that's what my heart told me was right too. I don't know if I made the right choices for you, baby girl. All I know is that I tried to be the kind of mother I want you to remember, someone who stands up for what she believes in, even when everyone else says she's wrong. Be brave, Emma. Be kind. And remember that sometimes doing the right thing costs more than you want to pay, but you do it anyway because that's what makes you human. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Mommy? Sarah folded the letter and put it in her jewelry box, then walked to Emma's room and stood in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep. In 3 days, she might lose the most important thing in her life. But she'd saved Rex, and she'd exposed Dr. Hartwell's corruption, and maybe that would have to be enough. The knock on the door came at exactly 6:00 a.m., 3 sharp raps that cut through Sarah's restless sleep like a gunshot. She'd been awake most of the night anyway, staring at the ceiling and mentally rehearsing arguments for the custody hearing that was now just 8 hours away. Her mother was asleep on the couch. She'd insisted on staying over to provide moral support. Though, at 73 with arthritis and high blood pressure, the stress of Sarah's situation was taking its toll on her health too. Sarah wrapped her bathrobe around herself and peered through the peephole, expecting to see a process server or another reporter. Instead, she saw something that made her heart skip. Officer Martinez stood on her doorstep in full uniform, and behind him were 5 other officers from the Cleveland Police K-9 unit, also in uniform. Rex sat at Martinez's feet, healthy and alert, his tail wagging as if he somehow knew he was at the right place. Sarah opened the door with trembling hands. Officer Martinez? What are you? Is everything okay? Martinez's face broke into the biggest smile she'd seen in months. Sarah Chen, we need to talk, and we brought some friends who wanted to thank you personally. The officers filed into her small apartment with respectful nods and quiet ma'ams. Sarah recognized some of them from the hospital that night. Sergeant Rodriguez, Officer Johnson, Officer Patricia Walsh, with her Belgian Malinois named Duke. But there were others too. Older officers with weathered faces and hard eyes that had seen too much. Younger ones who looked like they could be Emma's teachers or neighbors. "Sarah," Martinez said, his voice formal but warm, "I want you to meet the entire Cleveland Police K-9 unit. Every officer, every dog. We're here because of what you did for Rex, but more importantly, we're here because of what we found out about why you were really fired." Rex had made himself at home, sniffing around the apartment before settling at Sarah's feet and looking up at her with those intelligent brown eyes. She knelt to scratch behind his ears, marveling at how healthy and strong he looked. "He's completely recovered," Martinez continued. "The vet says the surgery was textbook perfect. Better than perfect, she said. You saved his life with millimeters to spare. Another 10 minutes and we would have lost him." Sarah felt tears starting. "I'm so glad he's okay. I've been worried." "Sarah?" Sergeant Rodriguez interrupted, his gravelly voice commanding attention. "We didn't come here just to say thank you, though we are more grateful than you'll ever know. We came because we've been conducting our own investigation into what happened at Mercy General, and what we found is going to blow this whole case wide open." Officer Johnson stepped forward with a manila folder, thick with documents. "Ma'am, we've been documenting the hospital's treatment of service animals for over a year. What happened to Rex wasn't isolated. It was part of a pattern." Sarah's mother had woken up and was hovering in the doorway, her eyes wide with confusion and concern. "Sarah, honey, is everything all right?" "Mom, these are the officers from the K-9 unit, the ones I told you about." Her mother's expression immediately softened. "Oh, you're Rex's partners. Sarah talks about you all constantly. Please, come in, sit down. Can I make coffee?" As her mother bustled around making coffee, the officers laid out their evidence on Sarah's small kitchen table. Photos, veterinary records, incident reports, medical bills, a paper trail of systematic negligence, and deliberate cruelty. "This is K-9 Officer Bruno," Rodriguez said, pointing to a photograph of a German shepherd with intelligent eyes. "Brought to Mercy General 6 months ago after being stabbed during a domestic violence call. Dr. Hartwell refused treatment, said it was outside hospital scope. Bruno died in the parking lot while we waited for transport to the veterinary hospital." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God, this is K-9 Officer Princess," Officer Walsh added, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Belgian Malinois, 8 years old, hit by a car during a pursuit. Mercy General wouldn't even let us bring her inside. She died on the sidewalk." The photos kept coming, each one representing a life that could have been saved if Dr. Hartwell hadn't implemented her cruel policies. Not just dogs, a police horse named Thunder who'd suffered colic during a crowd control operation, a search and rescue dog named Scout who'd been injured in a building collapse. "Every single one of these deaths was preventable," Martinez said, his voice rising with anger. "Every single one was a direct result of Dr. Hartwell's policies, but we couldn't prove it was deliberate until we started digging deeper." Officer Johnson pulled out another folder, this one containing financial documents and what looked like bank records. "That's when we discovered the money trail, Doctor. Hartwell wasn't just refusing to treat our animals, she was actively steering business to Cleveland Metropolitan Hospital." "We know about that," Sarah said. "Janet Kim told me about the financial connections." "Janet Kim knows about the stock holdings and board positions," Rodriguez corrected. "She doesn't know about the direct payments, the kickbacks." Sarah stared at him. "Kickbacks?" Martinez pulled out his phone and showed her a digital recorder app. "Sarah, I've been recording my interactions with hospital personnel for 8 months, ever since Bruno died. I had a feeling something wasn't right about their policies." He pressed play, and Dr. Hartwell's voice filled the small apartment, clear and unmistakable. "Officer Martinez, I need you to understand that Mercy General simply cannot continue to provide emergency veterinary services. It creates too much liability exposure, and frankly, it's not profitable. Cleveland Metropolitan has a state-of-the-art animal treatment facility that's much better suited to your needs." "But Dr. Hartwell, Metro is 40 minutes away. In an emergency, officer, I'm trying to help you here. Metro is willing to provide preferential treatment for police animals, expedited service, even discounted rates. They value the relationship with law enforcement in a way that, well, frankly, in a way that some people here don't appreciate." The recording continued, Dr. Hartwell becoming more explicit about her financial arrangements with Cleveland Metropolitan, more dismissive of service animal lives, more contemptuous of the officers who risk their lives with their four-legged partners. "There are 12 hours of recordings like this," Martinez said. Dr. Hartwell documenting her own corruption, her own callous disregard for service animal lives. She was so confident she'd never be challenged that she said everything on tape. Sarah felt like the world was spinning around her. This proves everything. This proves that my firing wasn't about policy violations or patient safety, it was about protecting her kickback scheme. It proves more than that, Officer Walsh said quietly. It proves that she's been deliberately killing our partners for money. That's not just corruption, that's something close to murder in my book. Rodriguez pulled out one more document, this one bearing the official seal of the Cleveland Police Department. Sarah, this is a formal commendation signed by the police chief himself. You're being recognized for exceptional service to law enforcement and for risking your career to save the life of a sworn officer. Sarah read the commendation through tears, the official language unable to capture the emotional weight of what it meant. After months of being called a criminal, a rogue nurse, an unstable troublemaker, the entire police force was officially recognizing her as a hero. But the most important thing, Martinez continued, is what happens next. We're taking all of this evidence to the FBI. Dr. Hartwell took money from Metro in exchange for steering police business their way. That's wire fraud, mail fraud, probably RICO conspiracy, federal crimes with serious prison time. And we're going to every media outlet in the state, Johnson added. Channel 7 gets the exclusive, but by tonight, everyone will know that you didn't just save Rex, you exposed a corruption scheme that was killing police officers' partners for profit. Sarah's phone rang. She glanced at it, saw Janet Kim's number, and put it on speaker. Sarah, are you sitting down? Because I have news that's going to change everything. Janet, I'm here with the K-9 unit officers. Sarah, Dr. Hartwell was arrested 20 minutes ago. FBI raid on her office, her home, Mercy General's financial records. The U.S. Attorney is announcing federal corruption charges this afternoon. The apartment erupted in cheers and applause. Rex barked excitedly, caught up in the energy, even if he didn't understand the specifics. Sarah's mother started crying, her hands pressed to her chest. There's more, Kim continued. The state nursing board just suspended their disciplinary hearing pending the outcome of the federal investigation. The prosecutor's office dropped all criminal charges against you. And get this, Mercy General's board of directors fired Dr. Hartwell's entire legal team and issued a public statement calling your actions heroic and your termination a grave error in judgment. Sarah couldn't speak. After months of legal threats, financial ruin, and character assassination, everything was crumbling away like a house of cards in a hurricane. Sarah? Kim's voice came through the phone. Are you there? I'm here, she managed. I can't believe it's over. It's not over, Martinez said, grinning broadly. It's just beginning, because now we get justice. For Rex, for Bruno, for Princess, for all of them, and for you. Rodriguez stood up, his massive frame filling the small apartment. Sarah Chen, you didn't just save Rex's life that night. You saved every service animal that would have died because of Dr. Hartwell's policies. You exposed a corrupt system that valued money more than the lives of officers who serve this community. You're a hero, Officer Walsh said simply. And heroes don't go to prison. Heroes get justice. As the officers prepared to leave, Martinez knelt beside Rex and whispered something in the dog's ear. Rex trotted over to Sarah and sat directly in front of her, then extended his paw for a handshake. He wanted to say thank you one more time, Martinez explained. Dogs don't forget who saves their lives. Neither do cops. After the officers left, Sarah sat in her kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of Dr. Hartwell's corruption, the commendation from the police chief in her hands. Her phone was buzzing constantly with calls from reporters, lawyers, and supporters, but she ignored them all. For the first time in months, she felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. The FBI press conference was scheduled for 2:00 p.m., but by noon, every major news outlet in Ohio had camera crews set up outside the federal building in downtown Cleveland. Janet Kim stood among them, her press badge hanging around her neck like a badge of honor, knowing that her 8 months of investigative work had led to this moment. U.S. Attorney Michael Harrison took the podium at exactly 2:00 p.m., flanked by FBI Special Agent Maria Santos and Cleveland Police Chief Robert Thompson. The assembled reporters fell silent as Harrison adjusted his microphone and opened a thick folder. Ladies and gentlemen, today the United States Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Ohio announces the arrest of Dr. Victoria Hartwell, former hospital administrator at Mercy General Hospital, on federal charges including wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, and violation of federal anti-kickback statutes. The press conference was being live-streamed on every major network, and Sarah watched from her apartment with Emma curled up beside her, both of them transfixed by the dramatic reversal of fortune. Dr. Hartwell systematically accepted bribes and kickbacks from Cleveland Metropolitan Hospital in exchange for steering lucrative medical contracts away from her own employer, Harrison continued. She deliberately sabotaged emergency medical services for law enforcement service animals, resulting in the preventable deaths of at least 6 police dogs and 1 police horse over the past 18 months. Emma looked up at her mother with wide eyes. "Mommy, are they talking about the bad lady who fired you?" "Yes, sweetheart. They're explaining that she was doing bad things for money, and that's why she didn't want me to save Rex." On screen, FBI Special Agent Santos stepped to the microphone. The investigation began when several Cleveland police officers came forward with recordings and documentation of Dr. Hartwell's criminal activities. These brave officers spent months gathering evidence while continuing to serve and protect our community, knowing that their four-legged partners were being denied life-saving medical care. Chief Thompson's face was grim as he took his turn at the podium. The Cleveland Police Department wants to be clear about something. Nurse Sarah Chen is a hero. Her decision to save K-9 Officer Rex's life, despite facing threats and intimidation, exposed a corrupt scheme that was murdering our service animals for profit. Every officer in this department owes her a debt of gratitude. The questions from reporters came rapid fire. "Chief Thompson, what was the hospital receiving in exchange for the kickbacks?" Dr. Hartwell was paid $50,000 per month by Cleveland Metropolitan, plus stock options and board fees totaling approximately $300,000 annually. Agent Santos, how long was this scheme operating? Our investigation shows the conspiracy began at least 3 years ago, possibly longer. U.S. Attorney Harrison, what are the potential penalties Dr. Hartwell faces? Wire fraud carries a maximum penalty of 20 years in federal prison. Combined with the other charges, Dr. Hartwell could face up to 60 years in prison and millions in fines. But the most devastating moment came when Chief Thompson held up enlarged photographs of the service animals who had died because of Dr. Hartwell's policies. "Bruno," he said, his voice thick with emotion. 8 years old, stabbed protecting a domestic violence victim. Died in Mercy General's parking lot because Dr. Hartwell wouldn't allow treatment. Princess, 6 years old, hit by a car during a high-speed pursuit of armed robbery suspects. Died on the sidewalk outside the hospital. Each photograph showed not just a police dog, but a partner, a family member, a hero who had served the community and died because one woman valued money more than lives. Sarah's phone rang constantly throughout the press conference. Reporters, supporters, job offers from hospitals across the state. But the call that mattered most came from Mike Torres, her public defender. "Sarah, it's over. All criminal charges dropped, all civil suits dismissed." The prosecutor's office issued a formal apology. Mercy General wants to settle. They're offering reinstatement, back pay, and a substantial financial settlement. "How substantial?" Sarah asked, almost afraid to hope. 7 figures. Plus, they're establishing a $2 million fund for emergency veterinary care at all Cleveland hospitals, to be named the Sarah Chen Service Animal Emergency Fund. Sarah felt like she was dreaming. After months of financial ruin, legal threats, and public humiliation, she was being offered more money than she'd ever imagined, along with the restoration of her professional reputation. "There's more," Torres continued. "The State Nursing Board not only dropped their disciplinary hearing, they're presenting you with their annual Excellence in Nursing Practice Award. The ceremony is next month. But the most satisfying moment came at 6:00 p.m. when Channel 7 News led their evening broadcast with Janet Kim's exclusive report. Hero nurse vindicated, federal investigation exposes hospital corruption. Kim's report was masterful, weaving together the recordings from Officer Martinez, the financial evidence of kickbacks, and interviews with the K-9 officers whose partners had died because of Dr. Hartwell's policies. She'd saved the most damning evidence for last, a recording of Dr. Hartwell laughing about stupid cops who think their mutts are actually important. The public reaction was swift and brutal. Justice for Sarah began trending nationally within hours. Mercy General's social media accounts were flooded with demands for accountability. Hospital board members resigned. Major donors withdrew support. Dr. Patricia Wells, the emergency medicine physician who had criticized Sarah's actions weeks earlier, posted a public apology on her medical blog. "I was wrong about Nurse Chen. I allowed my concern for protocol to blind me to the corruption and cruelty she was exposing. She acted with courage and compassion when institutional authority failed. I apologize publicly and unreservedly." The comments on that post were dramatically different from the ones that had attacked Sarah weeks earlier. Sarah Chen is what every healthcare worker should aspire, to be someone who puts saving lives above covering for corrupt administrators. The fact that they tried to destroy her career for exposing this corruption makes her even more of a hero. Every police officer in America should be grateful for what she did. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from David, her ex-husband. Saw the news. Dropping the custody motion. Emma should be with her hero mom. Another text from her former colleague Lisa at Mercy General. Sarah, everyone here is talking about how brave you were. We're planning a welcome back party for when you return. The entire nursing staff wants to apologize for not standing up for you. But perhaps the most meaningful message came from Emma's teacher, Mrs. Peterson. Sarah, Emma has been telling everyone at school that her mommy is a real hero who saves animals and catches bad guys. She's the most popular kid in 3rd grade now. Looking forward to seeing you both at the Mother's Day assembly. Emma wants you to wear your nursing uniform. As Sarah put Emma to bed that night, her daughter had one final question. Mommy, are you going back to work at the hospital? I think so, sweetheart. Do you want me to? Will you save more animals if they get hurt? Sarah smiled, thinking about the Sarah Chen Service Animal Emergency Fund, about the new protocols that would ensure no service animal would ever again be denied life-saving care, about all the Rexes and Brunos and princesses whose lives would be saved because she'd had the courage to do the right thing when it mattered most. Yes, Emma, I'll save every animal I can. Good, Emma said, snuggling under her blankets. That's what heroes do. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity for Dr. Victoria Hartwell's sentencing hearing, with overflow crowds watching on closed-circuit television in adjacent courtrooms. Sarah sat in the front row between Officer Martinez and Janet Kim, wearing the navy blue suit she'd bought for job interviews that never materialized, interviews that had been replaced with job offers from every major hospital in Ohio. Dr. Hartwell looked nothing like the imperious administrator who had fired Sarah 6 months earlier. Federal custody had aged her dramatically. Her platinum hair had grown out to show gray roots, her expensive suits replaced with an orange jumpsuit, her arrogant confidence shattered by the weight of a federal corruption conviction. Judge Patricia Walsh, no relation to the K-9 officer, had a reputation for tough sentences, and the evidence presented during the 3-week trial had clearly affected her. Dr. Hartwell, she began, her voice carrying the authority of the federal bench. Your crimes represent a betrayal of every principle that should govern healthcare administration. The prosecution's case had been overwhelming. Financial records showing the 50 monthly payments from Cleveland Metropolitan Hospital. Recordings of Dr. A.T. Hartwell laughing about dead mutts and stupid cops who care more about dogs than profits. Testimony from veterinarians about the animals who had died preventable deaths. But it was Officer Martinez's testimony that had been the most devastating. He'd stood at the witness stand in his dress uniform, his voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face, and described holding Rex in his arms as the dog's life ebbed away, only to be refused treatment by a hospital administrator who was more concerned with liability than life. Your Honor, Martinez had said, Rex isn't just my partner, he's my family. He's saved my life more times than I can count, protected children from armed predators, found drugs that could have killed thousands of people. And Dr. Hartwell would have let him die in a parking lot to protect her kickback scheme. The defense had tried to argue that Dr. Hartwell's policies were standard hospital procedure, that liability concerns justified refusing veterinary care, but they couldn't explain away the recordings, the financial payments, or the documented pattern of steering business to Cleveland Metropolitan. Amanda Cross, the high-powered attorney who had terrorized Sarah during her deposition, was notably absent from the defense team. She'd been hired by Mercy General's insurance company, and when the hospital settled with Sarah and issued their public apology, Cross's services were no longer needed. The defendant's crimes, Judge Walsh continued, were motivated by pure greed and resulted in the preventable deaths of service animals who had dedicated their lives to protecting our community. The callousness with which she discussed these deaths during recorded conversations demonstrates a level of moral bankruptcy that this court finds deeply disturbing. Dr. Hartwell's lawyer, a public defender who had been assigned when her assets were frozen during the investigation, made a brief plea for leniency. Your Honor, my client has lost everything, her career, her reputation, her freedom. She's received death threats from animal lovers across the country. She's suffered enough. Judge Walsh's expression didn't soften. Dr. Hartwell, you used your position of trust to enrich yourself while denying medical care to animals who had served and protected this community. You destroyed the career of a nurse whose only crime was saving a life you would have let die for money. Sarah felt a chill of satisfaction at those words. For months, she'd been the one facing criminal charges, professional discipline, and public condemnation. Now the tables had completely turned. Furthermore, Judge Walsh continued, your attempts to criminally prosecute Miss Chen for exposing your corruption represent an abuse of the legal system that cannot be tolerated. You used your influence to convince prosecutors to file charges against a whistleblower who was trying to protect service animals from your policies. Detective Ray Morrison, who had investigated Sarah on behalf of the hospital, was nowhere to be seen. He'd been suspended pending his own internal affairs investigation into his connections with Mercy General's board of directors. On the charge of wire fraud, I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison. On the charge of conspiracy, 5 years to run consecutively. On the charges of mail fraud and kickback violations, 10 years to run concurrently with the wire fraud sentence. Total sentence: 20 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. The courtroom erupted. 20 years was near the maximum possible sentence, a clear message that corruption in healthcare would be punished severely. Dr. Hartwell's legs buckled, and she had to be supported by her attorney as the full weight of her fate settled on her. Additionally, Judge Walsh added, you are ordered to pay restitution of $3.2 million to Mercy General Hospital and the Cleveland Police Department for the costs associated with your criminal scheme. All assets are to be liquidated to satisfy this debt. As Dr. Hartwell was led away in shackles, Sarah felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief that justice had been served, sadness at the waste of a life and career, and overwhelming gratitude that her own nightmare was finally over. Outside the courthouse, the media circus was in full swing. Sarah had learned to navigate press conferences over the past months, and she'd prepared a statement with Janet Kim's help. Today, justice was served not just for me, but for every service animal who died because of Dr. Hartwell's policies, she said into the forest of microphones. Bruno, Princess, Thunder, and the others will never be forgotten. Their deaths led to changes that will save countless lives in the future. Chief Thompson stepped up to the microphone next. The Cleveland Police Department wants to announce that we're establishing the Bruno Memorial K-9 Medical Fund with Nurse Chen serving as the honorary chair. This fund will ensure that no service animal in Ohio is ever again denied emergency medical care. The questions from reporters were friendly now, focused on Sarah's plans for the future and her feelings about the verdict. A far cry from the hostile interrogations she'd endured during the darkest days of her ordeal. What's next for you, Nurse Chen? I'm returning to Mercy General Hospital next month as Director of Emergency Services. We're implementing new protocols for service animal care, and I'll be overseeing the Sarah Chen Service Animal Emergency Fund. How do you feel about Dr. Hartwell's sentence? Sarah paused, thinking about the question. I feel sad that it came to this. Dr. Hartwell was a skilled administrator who could have done tremendous good. Instead, she chose greed over compassion, and service animals died because of that choice. The sentence reflects the seriousness of her crimes. Any message for other healthcare workers who might face similar situations? Do the right thing, Sarah said simply. Even when it's hard, even when people in authority tell you not to, even when it might cost you everything. Lives are more important than policies, and compassion is more important than covering your own back. After the press conference, Sarah walked to her car with Officer Martinez and Rex, who was wearing his dress uniform collar for the occasion. The German Shepherd was healthy, strong, and back on active duty, having fully recovered from his injuries. Sarah, Martinez said as they reached the parking garage, I need to tell you something. Rex has been recommended for the Medal of Valor for his actions during the drug bust that got him shot. But more than that, he's been selected as the police department's K-9 of the year. Sarah knelt down to scratch Rex behind the ears. Did you hear that, boy? You're getting an award. Rex's tail wagged enthusiastically, and he gave Sarah's face a thorough licking. The ceremony is next month, Martinez continued. The chief wants you to present the award. After all, without you, there wouldn't be a Rex to honor. That evening, Sarah sat in her living room with Emma, both of them watching the news coverage of the sentencing. Emma was curled up against her mother's side, proud and happy in a way she hadn't been for months. Mommy, they keep saying you're a hero on TV. What do you think, sweetheart? Emma considered this seriously. I think heroes are people who help others even when it's scary. You helped Rex even though the bad lady told you not to. That makes you a hero to me. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Saw the news. So proud of you. Dad would have been proud too. You did the right thing, and it all worked out in the end. Another text. This one from David. Emma wants to know if she can bring Rex to show and tell at school. Martinez said yes if you approve. Sarah smiled, typing back. Of course, heroes should always stick together. As she tucked Emma into bed that night, her daughter had one final observation. Mommy, I'm glad you saved Rex, but I'm more glad that you're my hero. You're mine too, baby girl, you're mine too. 1 year later, Sarah stood in the gleaming new Emergency Veterinary Treatment Center at Mercy General Hospital, watching Dr. Patricia Wells perform surgery on a Belgian Malinois named Thor, who had been injured during a narcotics raid. The facility, funded entirely by the Sarah Chen Service Animal Emergency Fund, was state-of-the-art, with equipment specifically designed for treating police dogs, search and rescue animals, and service animals. Vitals are stable, Sarah reported, monitoring Thor's heart rate and breathing while Dr. Wells removed bullet fragments from the dog's shoulder. Blood pressure, holding steady. It was a scene that would have been impossible a year ago, but now it was routine. The new protocol Sarah had helped develop required all Cleveland hospitals to provide emergency care to service animals, with specialized staff trained in veterinary emergency medicine. No animal would ever again be turned away to die in a parking lot. Emma, now 9 years old and in 4th grade, was doing a school report on local heroes and had chosen her mother as her subject. She sat in the observation gallery above the OR, taking notes and photos for her presentation. Mom performed surgery on police dogs and rescue animals, Emma wrote in her notebook. She saved Rex's life and now helps save lots of animals. She's brave and stands up for what's right even when people don't want her to. The surgery was a complete success, and as Dr. Wells closed the incision, Officer Rodriguez appeared in the gallery with Thor's handler, Officer Patricia Young. Young was crying with relief, just as Martinez had cried the night Sarah saved Rex. "Thank you," Young whispered to Sarah as they watched Thor wake up from anesthesia. "Thank you for making this possible." It was a phrase Sarah heard regularly now. Police officers, firefighters, search and rescue teams all grateful that their four-legged partners would receive the same high-quality emergency care as human first responders. The Sarah Chen Service Animal Emergency Fund had grown to over $25 million, funded by donations from animal lovers across the country, law enforcement organizations, and guilty hospitals trying to demonstrate their commitment to service animals. Similar facilities had opened in 12 other cities, with more planned. The Thor surgery went perfectly, Sarah told Officer Martinez when he arrived to visit Rex, who was now 3 years old and at the peak of his career. "He'll be back on active duty in 6 weeks. Martinez grinned, kneeling down to pet Rex, who had become something of a celebrity in Cleveland. The German Shepherd's story had been featured in magazines, documentaries, and even a children's book that Emma kept on her nightstand. "Rex has some news," Martinez said. "Tell her, boy." Rex sat perfectly still and extended his paw towards Sarah, the same gesture he'd made the morning the K-9 unit had arrived at her door, with evidence of Dr. Hartwell's corruption. "He's retiring," Martinez explained. 8 years of service, dozens of arrests, several commendations, the department's giving him full honors. Sarah felt a pang of emotion. Rex had been the catalyst for everything: her firing, her vindication, the exposure of corruption, the transformation of emergency veterinary care. His retirement marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. "What will he do next?" Emma asked, coming down from the observation gallery. "He's going to be a therapy dog," Martinez replied. "Working with children who've been traumatized by violence, veterans with PTSD, other cops who need someone to talk to, Rex has a gift for helping people heal." It seemed perfect. Rex, who had been saved by compassion, would spend his retirement providing comfort to others who needed healing. Sarah's phone chimed with a reminder. State Nursing Board Awards Ceremony 2:0 p.m. She was receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award for her advocacy work and her role in transforming emergency animal care protocols. At 33, she was the youngest recipient in the award's history. "Mom," Emma said as they walked toward the hospital's main entrance, "Mrs. Patterson wants to know if you can speak to our class about standing up for what you believe in." "Of course, sweetheart. What should I tell them?" Emma thought seriously. "Tell them that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. And tell them that heroes aren't people with superpowers, they're just people who help others when they need it most." The awards ceremony was held at the Columbus Convention Center, with over 500 nursing professionals in attendance. When Sarah's name was called, the standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. She walked to the podium wearing her dress uniform from Mercy General, the same uniform Emma had wanted her to wear to the Mother's Day assembly. "When I decided to save Rex's life that night," Sarah began, "I thought I was just being a nurse. I thought I was just doing what my training and my conscience told me was right. I had no idea that one decision would change so many lives." She looked out at the audience nurses, doctors, administrators, people who had dedicated their lives to healthcare and healing. But that's the power of individual action. One person, making one choice to do what's right, can create ripples that spread far beyond what we can imagine. Sarah's speech focused on the importance of patient advocacy, of standing up to institutional pressure, of remembering that healthcare was about preserving life, all life, not about protecting profits or avoiding liability. Dr. Hartwell is serving 20 years in federal prison, Sarah continued. But this was never about punishment or revenge. It was about changing a system that valued money more than compassion, policies more than lives. She paused, thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. Every one of you will face moments when doing the right thing seems impossible, when authority figures tell you to look the other way, when speaking up seems like it will cost you everything. In those moments, remember Rex. Remember Bruno and Princess and Thunder and all the others who died because good people stayed silent. Remember that your oath as healthcare providers is to preserve life and relieve suffering. Not human life, all life. Not corporate suffering, actual suffering of living beings who depend on us for care and compassion. The applause was thunderous, and as Sarah returned to her seat, she saw familiar faces in the audience. Janet Kim, covering the ceremony for Channel 7, Officer Martinez, and several other K-9 unit members. Dr. Patricia Wells, who had become a close friend and collaborator, her mother, beaming with pride. And Emma, sitting in the front row, wearing a t-shirt that said, "My mom is a hero," and taking photos with her tablet to add to her school report. After the ceremony, Sarah and Emma drove home through Cleveland's west side, past Mercy General Hospital where Sarah now worked as Director of Emergency Services, past the police station where Rex and Martinez had their final roll call, past the elementary school where Emma was thriving academically and socially. "Mom," Emma said, as they pulled into their driveway, "a real house now, bought with part of the settlement money from Mercy General. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't saved Rex?" Sarah considered the question. "I think about it sometimes. Dr. Hartwell would probably still be stealing money and letting service animals die. Other hospitals might have adopted similar policies. Good people would have stayed silent because they were afraid of losing their jobs. So you saved more than just Rex? I think maybe we all saved each other, sweetheart. Rex needed medical care. I needed to do the right thing. Officer Martinez needed to expose corruption. Janet Kim needed a story that mattered. Sometimes, the universe puts us exactly where we need to be, to help each other." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I want to be like you when I grow up. Not a nurse necessarily, but someone who stands up for what's right even when it's scary." "You already are like that, Emma. You stood by me when everyone else said I was wrong. You believed in your mom when it would have been easier to be embarrassed by all the attention. That took courage." That evening, Sarah sat on her back porch with a cup of coffee, reading emails from nursing students, veterinary professionals, and animal lovers who had been inspired by her story. One email, from a veterinary nurse in Seattle, stood out. "Ms. Chen, I wanted you to know that your story gave me the courage to report safety violations at the clinic where I work. The owners were cutting corners on anesthesia and pain medication to save money, and several animals suffered unnecessarily. I was afraid to speak up because I needed the job, but your example showed me that staying silent wasn't really an option. The clinic has been investigated, and the problems have been corrected. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like." Another email, from a police officer in Denver. "My K-9 partner was injured last month, and when we arrived at the hospital, they immediately began treating him with the same urgency they would show for a human officer. The doctor told me they had implemented Sarah Chen protocols after reading about your case. My partner made a full recovery and is back on duty. I'll never be able to thank you enough." The sun was setting over Cleveland, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded Sarah of the scrubs she used to wear, back when she was just a nurse trying to do her job and help people. Now she was something more, a symbol of the power of individual courage, a reminder that one person's decision to do the right thing could change everything. Her phone buzzed with a text from Officer Martinez. "Rex wants to know if he can come to Emma's birthday party next weekend. He promises to be on his best behavior." Sarah smiled, typing back, "Of course, heroes always stick together." As she looked up at the first stars appearing in the darkening sky, Sarah thought about the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. A year ago, she'd been a struggling single mother facing criminal charges and professional ruin, all because she'd decided to save a dog's life. Now, she was nationally recognized as a healthcare hero, director of one of the most innovative emergency medicine programs in the country, and the architect of policies that had already saved hundreds of service animal lives. But more than that, She was exactly who she'd always wanted to be, someone who stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. Someone who chose compassion over convenience, courage over comfort, principle over profit. Someone Emma could be proud to call Mom. Inside the house, Emma was finishing her homework at the kitchen table, occasionally looking up at the framed photo of her mother and Rex that had been featured on the cover of Nursing Today magazine. The headline read, "The Nurse Who Changed Everything: How Sarah Chen's Courage Transformed Emergency Animal Care." "Mom," Emma called out, "I finished my hero report. Want to read it?" Sarah came inside and read over Emma's shoulder as her daughter put the finishing touches on her school project. The report was thorough and well-written, covering not just the events of that night, but the broader impact of Sarah's actions. The final paragraph made Sarah's eyes water. "My mom is a hero because she saved Rex's life. But that's not the most important reason. She's a hero because she taught me that doing the right thing is more important than being safe, that standing up for others is more important than protecting yourself, and that one person can make a difference if they're brave enough to try. I hope I can be as brave as my mom when I grow up." Sarah hugged her daughter tightly, thinking about the courage it had taken for an 8-year-old to stand by her mother when the whole world seemed to be against them, to believe in her mom's goodness when everyone else called her a criminal. "You're already braver than me, sweetheart," Sarah whispered. "You already are." Outside, the stars were coming out in full force, and somewhere in the city, Rex was settling down for his first night of retirement, surrounded by the love of the family he'd helped save. Tomorrow, he would begin his new career as a therapy dog, bringing comfort to others the way Officer Martinez's love and loyalty had brought comfort to Sarah during her darkest days. It was the perfect ending to a story that had changed everything, and the perfect beginning to whatever came next.